All right, so I'm going to do problem like at the end of 8.5. So on this problem, I'm going to find the domain. I'm going to list the domain. X and Y intercepts. All asymptotes. And then choose a graph. So this has a little bit of everything in it. And my equation is going to be f of x equals x plus 2 over x squared minus 4. And then on this problem, I show y'all how a hoe is created in the graph instead of an asymptote. I don't know if y'all have ever seen a graph go along and have a hoe in it, then it keeps going. Yeah. So y'all, first I'm going to find my domain. So to find the domain, I'm worried about the bottom of this fraction. So I'm going to take the x squared minus 4, set it equal to 0. I'm going to solve that by factoring, but you could use the quad on this. If you use the quad, A is 1, B is 0, and C is a -4. Okay. Well, I'm going to factor this pretty quick. Let's see. That's an x and an x. The 4 is negative, so I got unlike signs. And in factor the 4 that would give me 0 would be 2 and 2. And then you just solve both the little mini equations. So we get x is -2. And x is a positive 2. So those are the two values I'm going to kick out of my domain. I'm going to do my domain in interval notation. So interval notation, you start at -infinity. And then you go until you hit the first number you want to kick out, which is going to be -2. So I'm going to union around that -2 to kick it out. From -2, you go until you hit the +2. Union around +2 to kick it out. And then head to infinity. So remember, on the domain, to exclude those numbers, you use these little unions around them, okay? All right, so that's the domain. Then it wants me to find the x and y intercepts. So to find the x-intercepts, you take the numerator and set it equal to 0. So my numerator is x plus 2. So I'm going to set x plus 2 equal to 0. All right, so solving that, I'm just going to subtract 2. So I get x equals -2, which means the x-intercept is going to be -2, comma 0. Okay. Then I'm going to find the y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, you find f of 0. Which means you'll take this function and put zeros in for these x's and see what we get. So f of 0 will be 0 plus 2 over 0 squared minus 4. That's going to give me what, 2 over -4. Oh, that'll give me what, a -1/2. So my y-intercept is 0, -1/2. Now it asks me to find all the asymptotes. So I'm going to start with my vertical asymptotes. Now, normally, the vertical asymptotes would be the same as the numbers I'm kicking out of my domain here. Except, guess what? Anytime a x-intercept matches a 0 on the bottom, they cancel each other out. And that asymptote goes away and they say, oh. So what I'm looking at, so I got x equals -2 on the bottom. On the top, I had x equals -2. So basically, those factors cancel each other out. So the only vertical asymptote is going to be at, where'd I go? Oh, that should have been an equals. That should have been an equals to. So the only vertical asymptote will be x equals a +2. Okay, so the -2 got canceled because I got a -2, 0 that was on the top, and they canceled. So what's going to happen there on our graph, where the -2 was, it's going to be a hole in the graph instead of the big vertical asymptote. All right, we need to find a horizontal asymptote. So the horizontal asymptotes, I'm looking at the degree of the top and the degree of the bottom. The degree of the top is a 1, because we would assume that x has a 1 by it. The degree of the bottom is 2. So the degree of the bottom is greater than the degree of the top. And anytime the bottom has a higher degree than the top, your horizontal asymptote will be y equals 0. All right, y'all, so I think that's everything they gave us. So now they want me to graph this. I will say, you're lucky you ain't having to graph these by hand and they giving y'all pictures on them, okay? Let's see. So 2s are pretty much my biggest asymptote. So I'll go out about 5, I guess. So things I know on here. I know I got an x-intercept at -2. But remember, this x-intercept at -2 ain't really going to be a point, is it? It's going to be a circle. So that's where my asymptote got canceled with that 0 on the top. Now over here at +2, I do have a vertical asymptote. So remember, my graph cannot cross over that dotted line. My y-intercept is a -1/2. So right here at about -1/2, my graph is going to cross. What do we get on the horizontal asymptote was y equals 0. So eventually, in the long run, the graph is going to want to approach them zeros on the x-axis, okay? Right now, so let's see what we got. I'm going to start right here because I know since this is negative, and it cannot cross the x-axis anywhere but this point because that's the only 0. So that means this one has to come down like this. And then it's going to just come over and go through that 0 there, okay? Now you've learned most of these. If you notice, one side's coming down on the asymptote, the other side comes from the top, and it's going to come down and try to get to that x-axis. And then what happens here, this little part will sort of hump up, but then it's going to try to go back down to the x-axis also. Okay, so they give you 4 pictures of those. What was I doing? 10. Yeah. So what they try to do on this is they'll try to put the hole on the right side and the acetone on the left side. So you got to watch when they're back. They'll sort of flip them up on you, okay? Now, to tell you the truth, if you graph this on the calculator, it'll give you this picture, but you won't be able to see the little hole. Because the calculator pixels don't, you can't tell like when it's not shaded on it or whatever. But you could look on the graph table in there, the table, and at that -2x value, you'll see it says undefined on it. Okay. All right, so my last section for test 3 is 8.6. So what I'll do Monday, I'll review for that test, and I'm going to open it up, and it'll be due the next Sunday, which is like 18th, something like that, I think. Okay. All right, so 8.6 is polynomial inequalities. Now, they're going to want me to write my answers in interval notation, okay? So I'm going to refresh y'all on a few things here. If your equation has equals in it, so if it's greater than or equal or less than or equal, we got to use brackets. Because the brackets means that it does equal it and it can include that as a point, okay? If greater than or less than, you're going to use parentheses. Okay? So here's my steps to solving these. First thing I do, solve that equation, find those results. Now these are all going to be sort of quadratic, so you are able to use the quad formula on these, okay? So the first thing you do, solve the inequality. Then I sort of set up a number line. So set up a number line using results. Once I set up my number line, I'm going to choose. Now, so when I set up the number line, let me show you what that's going to look like. I'll have 2 solutions usually on these, okay? So I'm going to set up my number line using the 2 solutions I get from that equation. Then I choose a test point. And see if it's true or false. If it's true, you shade that region. So I want to show y'all the two patterns that these will come in, okay? So that was A and that was B. So if it's true in the middle region, that's the only region that'll be shaded. It will be false on the outer regions. So if it's true in the middle, it's going to be false on the outer regions. So that the interval on this would go from A to B. Or if it's false in the center, then it's going to be true on the outer edges. So if it's true on the outer edges, then your intervals will go from negative infinity to A, union B to positive infinity, okay? It's going to shade with one of these unless. So there's one more star. If only one solution, because sometimes you might get x plus 2 times x plus 2, which will give me both the same answers, okay? So if I only get one answer, then that is the only number we exclude from the domain. Okay, so basically it's getting these solved, setting up your little number line, and testing. Now, I'll tell y'all the easiest number to test in the world is 0. Find where 0 is on that number line, test it. If it's true, then you shade and everything else is. Now, if I tested 0 and it was in the A region on this one, then that means if this got shaded, automatically the other side's going to get shaded, okay? It's going to follow one of these two patterns on our shade. Oh, these masks make my face wet. And you're talking. All right, y'all probably couldn't even get me sick anyway because I had my shot. So.
I got my shot.
You get.
I'll get mine soon.
So y'all get them soon, and then we're gonna take these masks off.
We'll be able to breathe again.
I'm telling
They're
you.
supposed to lift everything fall semester, right? It'll be
We're
back to
hoping.
normal.
We're hoping it's, so in the fall, we're hoping it goes back to strictly face-to-face if you're doing face-to-face, where you'll come every day and you won't have to pick days and stuff. Online, strictly online like we've been doing. And they're also going to offer the webinar now. So if you like Zooming and you want to Zoom every class, they're going to have the webinar option on some of the classes. But on webinars, you won't come to face-to-face at all. It'll be strictly Zooming and stuff like that. So that's all right, but you're just limited to that internet access, you know. I've had too many cases where I've had classes get messed up. Probably the day later it will when the storms come.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, y'all like webinar?
It's all right.
It's not too bad if
If everything goes right.
it goes smooth and you don't have any connection issues, you know. Usually on my end, it's during the spring when we were strictly webinar, when that first hit us, you know.
Mhm.
Mine would be good, but then all my people would be losing connections. And it would just show someone trying to connect every 5 minutes, you know. So
Mhm.
who knows? All right, so let's try one of these. We're going to solve the inequality, and I got x minus 4 times x plus 2 less than 0. Now, this one, they've already sort of factored this one for us. So they're sort of starting about middle way on this one. But the rest of these, they're going to go x squared plus x minus something added, so we're going to have to factor it in, okay? So to solve this, you're going to take both of these and actually set them equal to 0. Add 4, subtract 2. So I get x is a positive 4. X is a negative 2. So I've got my two solutions. So I'm going to draw my number line here. So let's see, I know negative 2 comes before a positive 4, so I'm going to put my numbers in order. So now all I got to do is test this to see where I'm going to shade it at. So the number I'm going to test, I always test 0 because it's the easiest number to add and multiply to me. So where's 0 at on this graph? It's in right in the middle, ain't it?
I don't know.
So 0 is going to be in here somewhere. So we're going to put a 0 into this equation, and if it's true, I'm shading that area. If it's false, we're shading the outside areas, okay? All right, so here we go. That's going to give me a 0 minus 4 times 0 plus 2 has to be less than 0. So what's that, a negative 4 times 2 less than 0? Negative 8 less than 0. True or false?
Yeah, it's true.
It's definitely true, right? So since this is true, shade where the 0 was located. So since my 0 was in the center, I would shade the center section. So we've got the answer now. We're going to write it as interval notation. That's when I'm looking at this. That's on the left hand, right? So since it's on the left hand, we're going to use parentheses. If I had an equals under it, then I would use the brackets, okay? So all we got to do is put a parenthesis in our negative 2, comma 4, close parentheses. So since we was in the middle, we didn't have to use the unions for those outsides, okay? No, they're not too bad. Just getting used to shading that line and writing that into that interval notation. All right, this one has x squared minus 13x plus 40 is going to be greater than 0. So once again, it'll be parentheses because I don't have an equals under my greater than. So solve this by quad or factoring. I'll probably factor all of mine. All right, last number's positive, so both of these will be negative like the middle. Oh Lord, let me think. Factor to 40, that'll equal 13. 85, right? 85, that sounds good.
Yeah.
All these would factor if you want to factor them, because that way they all work on the number line. They're not going to give us none of these that are going to have them crazy radical answers on them. All right, so let's get these two answers. So I get x equals a positive 8. X equals a positive 5. So I'm going to draw the middle number line here. So I know 5 comes before 8. And guess what number I'm still going to test? I'm going to test a 0. But y'all can test any number you want, just to let y'all know, okay? Now, guess what? 0 is going to be in the first section for me, right? Because 0 is definitely less than 5. So what's going to happen, if this is true for 0, then we're automatically going to skip and then shade that last section, okay? So you cannot have 2 sections in a row shaded. You cannot have 2 sections in a row not shaded, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna put a 0. Now, the reason I use 0, because 0 squared is a 0. 0 times 13 is a 0. So all I need to know is 40 greater than 0, true or false? True, so I would shade that area. Skip the area, and then shade the last section. All right, let me unfreeze my screen. Oh, so y'all missed a whole lot of stuff. So if I freeze up, y'all let me know online, okay? They probably get that sign in and went back to bed, didn't they? So let me write this in interval notation. Now, since the ends are shaded, we're going to have to use the, did I not put them up here? I had on this again. But it's going to be the infinities on this one. So interval notation would start at negative infinity until we get positive 5. Parentheses, and then union math. Well, it starts again at 8. And from 8 it goes to positive infinity. Okay, so just remember, if you're shaded on both ends, you will use the union and have both your little intervals in there, okay? I think in this section, the only thing that really changes is the equations you gotta solve just to see what you'll do to them. All right, let's try this one. X squared plus 7x minus 22 is greater than or equal to an x minus 6. So this one, they made me do a little bit more work because I can't do anything while the x minus 6 is on the right side. We need to get a 0 over there. So to get a 0, we're going to subtract an x from both sides, and we're going to add a 6 to both sides. Okay, so I'm just slide it to the other side. So that, let's see what we get. We get an x squared. 7 minus 1 is 6x. Minus 22 and 16 is what? A 16 greater than or equal to a 0 now. So you notice I got an equals in this one, so we will use brackets when we come to the interval stuff, okay? All right, at this point, since you got 0 on the right side, you can hit this with the quad if you want to, okay? So x squared is an x and an x. Last side's negative, so one's positive, one's negative. Oh, let's see, I think I froze again. Man, I'm gonna freeze every 5 minutes, it looks like. All right, I'm gonna keep trying to catch it for y'all, and if it freezes, I'm gonna redo it, okay. Factors of 16, that'll give me a 6, or 8 and 2. Since the middle number is positive, my larger number 8 will be positive, and my 2 will be negative. All right, now set then to get these signs changed. You can see that's why that first one started with the parentheses on these, getting you used to this part, and then they started bringing in the equations on us. All right, so x is a negative 8. X is a positive 2. So I've got my number line now. So let's draw that. Let's see, negative 8 would come first, and then my positive 2. 0 I know is right in the middle of this. Now, what's nice, when I test my 0, I can use that original equation if I want to, or I can use this one right here if I want to. I always pick the one that's got the 0 on the right side because the x squared is going to be 0. The x term is going to be 0. So all we need to know is negative 16 greater than 0, true or false?
It's false.
It is false. So when we tested 0, we got it false, which means we do not shade where 0 is because it was false. And we're going to shade the outsides. Now I'll take on another trick on this. If you was to graph this, x squared plus 6x minus 16, anywhere, since that was greater than, anywhere the graph is above the x-axis would be the intervals we're finding. Anything below the x-axis would be the false parts. So on this one, it would be above the x-axis on the ends, but this part between -8 and 2 would be below, which makes it false.
Oh, okay.
All right, so now we're going to interval notation. Remember, I got equals in this, so I'm going to start at negative infinity, which is always in the parentheses. I'll go until I hit that -8, and I use a bracket. Then I'm going to union it with a bracket from the positive 2 to the positive infinity. All right, so hopefully I can get at least 2 more of these. I'm definitely going to that one, and then I had one. That last one I need to do for sure. Now, I'm not going to factor this one to solve it because anytime I just got an x squared term and a number to solve this, all we got to do is take square roots of both sides. And anytime you take the square root of a number, remember, it can be positive or negative. That's why on all those radicals, when y'all are doing it, it's got that plus or minus in the answers. Because remember, -3 times -3 is also 9, okay? All right, so square root of x squared is x. Oh, I'm just going to use equals here. And square root of 9 is a plus or minus 3, okay? So we got -3 here, positive 3 here. I know 0 is right in the middle. So when I test my 0, I'm basically going to have 0 squared greater than 9. True or false? False, right? Because 0 is definitely smaller than 9, so that was false. So we're not shading the middle, we're shading the outers. Now remember, there's no equals on it, so everything's going to be in parentheses on this one. From negative infinity to -3, and then union that from a positive 3 to a positive infinity. Okay? That'll be better than that A05 stuff, huh?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna at least get this one in, and then maybe the other one can. X squared plus 8. So x squared plus 8 is less than 4x. All right, so I need to subtract that 4x and get it on the other side in the middle. So now let's see what I get. X squared minus 4x plus 8 has to be less than 0. So I'm going to try to factor that and see what I get. factors, I'll just set it equal to 0. All right, so back to the positive, so both of these will be negative like the 4 in the middle. Oh, I need factors of 8 that would add to get a 4. 1 and 8 is 9. What's next? 2 and 4? Oh, that gives me 6. 8 9 is there. Ain't no factors that you can add of 8 to get me a 4. So since this does not factor, we would have what we call a now, if you do that on the quad and you get any answers that look like radicals or imaginary, that's going to give you no solution on these, okay? All right, so I think this is the one I actually want. Well, y'all needed to see that too. So no solution since it does not factor. Okay, so here's one I wanted y'all to see. One of these was the one answer. 10x minus 25 minus x squared is less than 0. So I'm definitely going to put these in the right order. I'm going to put the x squared first. So I'm going to have a negative x squared plus 10x minus 25 less than 0. Now, I don't want to have to factor a negative x squared. So I'm going to divide everything up there by a -1 so I can change the signs. So I want this first term to be positive, okay? But do y'all remember the rule? What I got to do if I divide by negative on the inequality? You know that, let's say greater than, if I divide by negative, I got to flip it, there you go. So that thing's now going to be a greater than sitting at the end. But notice I now have an x squared minus 10x plus 25 is now going to be greater than 0. Now I'm able to factor this. And I'll just make it equal when I do the factoring. All right, that's plus 25, so both of these will be negative like the middle numbers. So how about this? Factors of 25 that'll equal 10.
5 and 5.
Okay, so 5 and 5. Oh, so see what happens now? Now I got those repeating answers I was telling y'all about long ago. So since I got a repeating answer, I'm just going to set one of these equal to 0. I'm going to solve it by what, adding 5 to both sides. So I get x is a positive 5. But remember, we didn't erase it, but we said if we only get one solution, then that is the only number we kick out of our domain. So since that's the only solution, so that's the only number we kick out. We're going to start at negative infinity. Now this, you have to definitely use parentheses, okay? So I'll go to the 5, and then union from the 5 to the positive infinity. So when you got the one solution, you kick out the one answer and be done. So that's your 86. The main thing is just solving those quadratics, okay? Most of those, once you get a 0 on the right side, you throw it in quad, it's going to kick out them answers, okay? I'll tell you, the only one I didn't use quad was this one right here. Because that's the easiest thing, just take square roots and be done with it, okay? So, to be totally caught up with me Monday, you want to work through 8-6. because Monday I'm gonna review a little bit for y'all's test, open it up. And then Wednesday, we start, was it 9.3? Because we did 9.1 and 9.2 like on the first test, remember? They sort of skip around weird in here, but we'll start doing 9.3 stuff, and it deals with like exponential graphs and logarithms. Exponential graphs, y'all seen those COVID graphs? When they start out and they start shooting up and doubling. So those are your exponential graphs. Okay. Oh, so any questions? I sort of don't mind this section because it makes this test, it ends in a better than it starts, you know what I mean? Some of these, like y'all test too, the last thing we did was that difference quotient with all that full in member, trying to get rid of the H's and all that stuff. That was hard stuff. It's not too bad here. All righty, y'all. So I will send out my videos later, and Monday we review.
Sounds good.
All righty, y'all. We'll stop our recording.